Okay, so this is a game in the Oni, the Tier 7 Japanese Heavy that was just introduced in patch 9.10. And what we're going to talk about in this particular match is the tank itself and the advantages that it has, particularly in games like this where you're top tier. It is heavily armored, it is very, very big. It actually has reasonable depression. It has 10 degrees of depression, which is very helpful, and we're going to make use of that here. So we're going to go and play in the Northwest. There's a lot of the tanks up here that we can potentially bully, so we're looking at being aggressive up here in terms of how we play the area. And as we showed with the OI in a previous highlight, 10 degrees of depression is enough to play that 2-line somewhat effectively. The armor on this tank is very good. It's got 175 hull armor frontally, and it has 200 millimeters of armor on the turret. We'll talk a little bit about weaknesses and where you can shoot it and whatnot, but for the most part, the ideal place to, or the weakest place to shoot on this tank are the sides, which are very flat and very big. And only 70 millimeters thick. And so any tank in this game, Tier 5 tank to the Tier 7 tank, can pen this tank easily from the sides, but they will struggle in penning it from the front. And we'll go over some of that diagram in a little bit. The drawbacks to this tank, other than the weak side armor, is the fact that it is very, very tall. It is tall enough, actually, that you can hull down behind a JT-88, which... not behind the back of a JT-88, but literally you can hull down over a JT-88, so you can think about that for a second. That's how tall the tank is, which of course makes it a big profile, especially for artillery. It is also somewhat slow. It does have a decent horsepower to it, though, so it doesn't do too poorly on hills, and it does reach its top speed, which is 25-ish, pretty easily. And so we see that most of our team part of our team has come over here. Most of our team is still back in the base.
It's a trap!
Their team has pushed up here rather aggressively, which is good for them, especially considering that we don't have a whole lot there yet. So I need to anchor this sort of 2-line B-line area, because I don't want their team to start to get over into this area where this comet is, where he can potentially start shooting at the back of like where our IS and the FD are at. And so I'm keeping an eye on sort of both sides here. And so their team has a lot of tanks here. And so this is something that I need to keep an eye on. They're starting to push in here. I have the depression to push forward and get shots into that C1 area, but in this particular case I'm not going to, because the Comet is still being a little bit of a pest, and I don't want to give him a lot of free shots on my side. Because, like I said, that's the vulnerability that I need to protect. And see how the Comet has pushed forward to get shots on our guys over there? So it's my job to make sure that he gets punished to some extent. And so you'll see that we're actually able to get a lot of these guys down. Sorry, get shots on a lot of these guys. So they're pushing in here. They've controlled a lot of this area, so we need to just try to be as opportunistic as possible in terms of the shots that we get. They're starting to push their KV-85 over here, which is not really that much of a threat. The T-20 is a little bit of a threat, but not nearly as much as the Dicker Max, which has the better pen. When he's firing HCR, sorry. And so we've already lost that A1, A2 corner, so it's not really that helpful for me to try to do too much here. Our guys are on that A line. I need to just protect essentially my sides here. We've got our guys coming through their spawn to the back. So now we're sort of getting a little bit of a flank on, so we're getting a much better opportunity here. so we can be a little bit more aggressive as they sort of clean out the back, and I can use the back of this tank here to basically hold down, which doesn't give these guys a whole lot of shots. Not a whole lot of good shots anyways. And so they're trying to shoot my turret, which is not really the way to go. And I need to start trying to get some of these tanks down. There's a bunch of low health tanks here. And so the problem that they had on their team is that they pushed forward and into this flank, and they never pushed out of it. They had enough there that they should have pushed one direction or the other, but sitting where they ended up sitting was not good, because it essentially ended up getting them flanked. So although they pushed up aggressively, they didn't really do it that efficiently. And the other thing about this tank, it is very, very heavy, so it is useful to be able to ram tanks. Okay, so a number of things. So we were able to play this two-line efficiently. They actually pushed in here, which made it more difficult for us, because when you start getting people on the sides of this tank, that's when it becomes more vulnerable. If it's a situation where they're all more further back and you can keep everything in front of you, that's an ideal situation for this tank, especially if there's some hold down opportunity available, because the tank does have nice depression over the front. And so we'll talk really quickly, well, we'll go over the stats really quickly first. And so we're able to deal a lot of damage, primarily because they pushed into us. So there was a lot of opportunity for us to get shots of opportunity as they were pushing in, like the KV-85, Dare Max, you know, all those guys as they sort of pushed in. And so we fed off of that a little bit, and from the fact that they were going to struggle to pen us. And you'll notice that what we tried to do for most of that was try to make them come over a ridge on us, so that, you know, we can force them into a bad position where they can get shot, not just by me, but like we had our T-25/2 there, and we had there was someone else there that I can't recall right offhand. And so when you force them to come into you like that, you'll always sort of have the advantage. And it was a situation where, because we lost that A1, A2 area, there wasn't any reason for me to protect like where that Cromwell was shooting the back. It was just at that point looking for shots of opportunity and trying not to overexpose myself there. And so that allowed us to get a lot of easy shots. And then once they sat in that kill box and allowed themselves to get flanked, you know, the rest of it was all downhill from there. And so we were able to block a lot of damage with our armor, primarily because they were using only AP shells. And when you're top tier in this tank, if you're going to use AP shells, you can pen it rather easily through the side. You just need to make sure that you flank it. So where should you shoot the Oni from the front? And I think that's the question that we need to think about. And so when we look at the armor layout of the tank, so this is the side of the tank, so it has 70 millimeters of armor on the side, so it's really easy to pen through the side. There is a layer of spaced armor here, which is not very thick, but is something that can potentially eat heat shells, for example. So you need to be careful if you're firing heat to fire it further up. But because of this particular tank, you don't need to fire heat if you're on the side. You can fire AP. You can fire some HE shells into the side if that have high enough pen. So it is vulnerable in the side, and it is something where you can shoot it very easily. So what happens if you're attacking it frontally? If they're hull down, there's not really a whole lot that you can do. There's a little bit of these the cheeks of the turrets that are in the front that you can shoot, but that's not really the ideal situation. You probably don't want to face off against it hull down. There is sort of a little bit of a turret weakness here, but because this tank is so tall, you know, as we said, you can basically look over the top of a JT-88 with this tank. You're never going to be able to shoot down into these unless you're at a much higher elevation than the tank. There is a little small port there, but that's not going to be very easy to snipe. So especially if this tank comes around corners on you, so where do you want to shoot? There's these shoulders here that are weakish. There are also, if he starts coming around the corner, you can shoot at the opposite turret, which are weak. As they come around the corner. Interestingly enough, the back of the tank is actually relatively armored, so you kind of want to avoid this unless you have a reasonably high pen. The side of the tank really is where it's at. Anyhow, so I hope that was helpful in terms of playing the Oni, particularly as top tier, and looking to bully and using your armor, and as well as pointing out some of the strengths and weaknesses of the tank. And thanks for watching.